Warning, the show contains adult language, so viewer and listener discretion is advised. Welcome to another edition of Up and In It. I'm your host, Adrian Babashoff, and if you're new here, welcome as well. And for wondering what the show is about, it's entirely dedicated to improving quality of life for both people and planet through liberation and independence, moving you from surviving to thriving and living life. Hurrah! Today's episode 205, what I've learned from gardening this year. It's more accurate, like my own food production. The background noise before we get into it is my F350 7.3 liter 96 diesel truck. I do these podcasts in this is what I consider my mobile studio on my work commute. So that's the background noise. I apologize for that in advance. But let's get into this topic about food production, what I've learned. I mean, this is pretty crazy this year. It's mid-April of 2021. And for those of you who haven't been following me, I spin farm, meaning I grow a lot of my own food on large-scale gardening on other people's properties. It's my little side hustle. And yeah, this has been pretty crazy because it reminds me, for those of you who've been following me too, know that I've lived in a third world country on a farm. I was a cowboy. I grew up growing my own food, butchering animals, fishing, running around like a little, Russian Mowgli. And it was quite fun, really, when I think about it, except for all the hard work. Living in a third world country is a lot of hard work. There's a lot of things that you don't get as you do here in the United States. I grew up there and never left me. I like growing my own food, for the flavor and the vitamin, the nutritional value and everything. It's just a lot healthier. But this has been a pretty crazy year, and I think that there's a lot of people, I believe, that are getting more interested in gardening and about the fact of maybe what does it take to grow your own food. And I'm here to say I've never had a year like this. I've been gardening for quite some time, and the aphid pressure, for those of you who don't know what aphids are, they're these little tiny insects. They look like probably about 3 times the size of fleas. The babies are probably the size of fleas. They can be very small, but they suck the sap, the juice from your plants. The photosynthesis, they suck the sugars out. And what they do is they attach themselves like these giant, they have like these mosquito beaks, and they can proliferate. We did a whole show on them. They can proliferate like crazy. They can give birth to thousands. They can clone themselves. They're very interesting insects. It's said that they were here during the dinosaur ages. They've actually survived, and I believe it, because they're very hardy little bastards. The aphid pressure has just gone crazy. I would say that I've lost probably about 1/3 of my crops this year. It's so bad that I actually consider just quitting gardening for a while. Just wait till everything heats up. If you guys want to learn about them, I forget what the number of the episode was, but it's Aphids in the Garden. And yeah, it's just been crazy. And the thing that popped in my mind, what inspired me to do the show, was just how a few different things. But the one was, if I was depending on this for my livelihood to feed my family, I'd be fucked right now. I'd be completely and entirely screwed. So I want to explain to you guys. My large plants are being attacked, and those are kind of easier to maintain to an extent. It's, when you have, unless it's cabbage, like I'm growing Napa cabbage, and it has many layers to it. And what these bugs do is they get in between each layer, so you literally have to rip your cabbage apart to get to it. What happens when you rip it apart? You end up killing the plant. It's almost impossible. The other thing I was growing was Brussels sprouts, and I should have been eating these things right now. I got nothing whatsoever. Brussels sprouts are like little tiny cabbages, for those who don't know. Again, lots of layers, and these little aphids will wedge themselves inside and completely just take over the plant. There's no way to even spray natural stuff on them. So the larger plants, like kale and stuff like that, that's why I chose to grow stuff that's not so curly, like the dino kale, as they call it, the Lasanto instead of the Russian curly kale, because all those little folds and curves, that's where these insects like to hide. So even if you're spraying them off, which is a method with a hose, or trying to find them to rub them with your fingers, you can miss a whole colony of them. And these, if you miss like 4 or 5 aphids, and you spray your whole garden down, and you come back like a week later, those things could have like multiplied times 20, given the right conditions. So if you don't get them all, they just keep returning. And that's the problem, is I can't, even with my flat-leafed kales and stuff like that, I still can't kill all of them. So it's a constant this year of just going and going and going. And so not only did I lose a lot of my food that I'd like to grow, Like if I was depending on it, I'd be up shit creek. But I also, what it did is it married me to my farms, to my gardens. Meaning, I designed a system called the biodegradable container gardening system. That's a suspended garden where I don't have to worry about slugs and snails and mice and ants, all those kind of gophers, squirrels, birds. I've eliminated all of them, and these little tiny insects have infiltrated, and they've made it to where I have to be there almost every single day. So in order to keep these aphids, as I said, you forget a couple of them, they just start springing back. Well, the answer for me is I don't like to use any pesticides or poisonous stuff, so I'll use such things as castile soap and water, and I'll go and I'll spray them, and what that does is dehydrates them because they're very soft-skinned insects. But I'll spray them. The ones that the soap does touch kills, but the ones, again, in little folds or just underneath one tip of the leaf don't get killed, and they keep coming back. So I'm married to my farm. I invented this garden so I can only have to show up maybe once a week. And most of my work, like last year, was I spent way more time harvesting and all that than worrying about all these details. It was way easier. Whereas this year, to let people know too, it's nothing that you did or didn't do. It's just some years these guys are just in big numbers, and it's impossible really to deal with. There's only two ways to really deal with this situation, really. It's either to kill all your crops, all your stuff that's being invaded, just get rid of it, because you're wasting space, you're wasting time, and then and stop growing. Wait till the ladybugs and the predators of these guys show up, or maybe it gets a little hot, as they say. I would be careful with some of the things that people say, because my aphids have overwintered the entire winter I've been dealing with this until now, which we're in spring. The other thing they were saying is that when the ice comes, the cold, it kills some of them off. I'm going to say no, because I had a mustard plant, and I've got a video of them there's ice on the railing of my garden, like a heavy frost. These guys were frozen. I don't know about frozen solid, but there was ice crystals around them. That's pretty damn cold in my book. As soon as it melted, I went back with a magnifying glass and looked at them, and it was like nothing even happened. They were just running around. So do be careful with what people say, because what really is and what people say sometimes can be two different things. So where was I? Yeah, there's two ways to go about it. The other thing is I learned from gardeners such as Curtis Stone, one of the larger spin farmers, is that they just kind of switched up crops. They tried to find stuff that the aphids wouldn't eat. And again, I will say here that they say that aphids don't eat onions. Well, I have bunching onions, green onions, like chives, kind of like the giant green cutting onions. I got aphids all over those too, right? For some reason, they're not invading my lettuce too much, but they still are invading it. I've seen aphids invade lettuce before, but I guess what I've done with this problem is I've got some things that they really like cabbages and stuff, some brassicas, stuff in the cabbage family. And I've left a couple, even though I know I'm not going to be able to eat them, but it's something that they'll just go and munch on, so they'll leave, like, say, my lettuce, so you can get by with giving them a decoy, I guess. All right, so yeah, marriage to the farm. And the other key I'd say is large scalability. That's when you want to grow a lot of stuff. So whatever you think that you're gardening, mine, for instance, is about 300 plants, and I lost a lot of it. I didn't lose every single species, but I lost the majority of them. What this tells me, out of this observation too, is that going on a larger scale can be key, because you'll at least get some of it. The aphids can't kill basically everything unless you get a full-blown infestation. But one of the key points I've seen was that some of the plants, even in the same species, such as my Napa cabbage, would be attacked a lot more than, say, the exact same plant that was on the south side. It was separated. I always like to disperse my plants out. Don't ever just grow something in a row, the same thing. If you can kind of diversify it, in my knowledge or my opinion, it kind of tricks the bugs, so it's not so easy for them, and it could buy you some time. So that's go a little larger. One thing I have learned from gardening this year too is the weather changes, hot and cold. The heat came. We had a day where it was before spring. This is in Sunnyside, San Diego County of California. We had a day that came in and it was about 90 to 92 degrees, just out of split nowhere, which meant that it was maybe like 95 in my greenhouse. Well, what happens with all of your winter plants and your spring plants when they get hot? It's called bolting, right? Your lettuces, all your brassicas, meaning your cabbage family stuff, like your Swiss chard, your kale, your cabbages, your bok choy, things like that. I didn't even get a chance really to heat them. I get there after the heat and everything just bolted, started going up. And they do this because they know that they're probably going to die because they're not fit for heat. So just because we had that one little heat wave, all the plants immediately went to seed. So you never know what's going to happen. I think even on large scalability, growing a lot of them, I think that you're going to have a chance that a lot of stuff could bolt. You never know with the weather. It may have helped if I would have went and throw a shade tarp over them, which I think I'll try to experiment next year. And that's the shade tarp. It looks like a giant mesh screen. Throw that over for the day, shade everything, maybe put some misters on to try to keep everything nice and cool, and battle it out. So you have, besides the bugs and everything else, I think this back to the land movement, man, it's a hit and miss. And it really hit me like, wow. Because I've been thinking a lot about that. I'm sure a lot of you have too. Is like, I want to grow a lot of my own food. I'm sick of being lied to where my food comes from, and all these kind of, and the flavors taste like shit. I want fresh, farm to my garden to the table. Well, some years not so much, man. And that's probably why I think a lot of people there's a lot of canning that's involved, which takes a lot more work. So if we're looking to go back to the land and save some money, we do have some problems where how are we going to keep the property taxes and the mortgage or the rent or the electricity and all these type of things? How are we supposed to keep that on when we need to start canning and spraying every single day, trying to grow your own food? So I think growing your own food takes a lot more time, and it's a lot more of a gamble than what people think that it is. It's definitely a lot harder. I've seen it in South America where we used to live, in Uruguay, by the way, and we've had hard times. We've had times where we'd have to butcher a lot of our chickens because this disease was moving through, and we figured we'd save the meat before that happened. And a lot of things, farming is definitely not easy. So this whole back to the land movement, even just having a simple garden, can get quite frustrating. Mice and rodents, we talked about that. I had to literally these rodents. Even my suspended garden here had a trouble with mice. Right, I just made a whole new section, a whole new design on my biodegradable container gardening systems that I invented, and I made a couple of errors and wasn't thinking like a mouse, and they actually infiltrated and got in, and I had to make a couple more innovations to keep them out, and I finally got it down. But if it's not one thing, it could be another, and it could get quite frustrating. I am hoping to solve not all of these problems, as I can't, but the majority of them through my biodegradable container gardening methods, and it's coming to you guys soon. There's biodegradablecontainergardening.com. You guys can visit the website. There's not much there right now. There is some stuff, but I also have San Diego BC Gardening. It's a club on Facebook. I've got a lot of my videos there. I've got biodegradable container gardening on YouTube. We'll be posting a lot more soon on there. There is some stuff for you guys to take a look at. Oh. I want to talk last is my aviary concept has been working out very nicely, meaning that whether you have a hoop house or you have a square rectangular shaped greenhouse like I have right now, what I did is I got bird netting, and you want to get it a 1-inch diameter, meaning that's how much the openings are, or you could use the chicken wire. What I found is this keeps out a lot of the birds, which I had problems last year coming in and eating my seeds. The answer, what I did was I covered them, my planters, with burlap, and had to pin it down with these little homemade galvanized steel pins so that the birds couldn't lift it up. And then once my seeds were sprouted, I noticed they'd leave it alone. Mice, on the other hand, even though something sprouted, they'll come and eat it. But I had to do that with the birds. Another thing I found out was that these cabbage moths, right? They would come in. They're these little yellow butterflies, or they're white. They'll come in and lay their little larvae, and they can lay a lot of eggs. And those things will devour a garden within a week. You'll have a complete infestation, and they'll eat plants down to the nub. One thing I found out is this 1-inch diameter aviary netting or chicken wire disrupts their flight pattern. I can't give you guys 100%. We'll know more here during the spring of how well this works, but I did witness them not being able to get through. Their soft, delicate wings don't like touching the aviary netting. This is also helping aviary netting with rabbits, with squirrels, skunks I guess are a problem, possums. It keeps pretty much everybody out. The one thing I did find out that this year is I did have something, and it's hard to believe that it's rabbits, but I found a rabbit, a juvenile rabbit, that got stuck really inside of the vinyl fencing that I bought, the braided twine. It's very soft. It got stuck in there. It almost died. I thought that I saved it, and I didn't. It actually ended up dying regretfully later. So I definitely would recommend that instead of having the stuff like a fishnet where everything gets stuck in it, to actually get yourself some chicken wire, at least on the first bottom portion, if you're going to build an aviary around your entire garden. That way the rabbits and stuff don't get stuck in it. But it's definitely helped out big, but that was a loss to me. You see, I do a lot of stuff as I apply in the show that's beneficial for nature, and that was my whole point with this garden, was that we don't have to wage war on anything. I don't have to kill anything except for these fucking aphids. But yeah, and that really was a downer for me, that rabbit had to die that way. I tried to save him, but yeah. But that's it, guys. That's the show. I hope if I brought you guys any value, only if I brought you guys value, please subscribe, like, give me a review, help me get the show off the ground. We're on year 3. We're going to try to do the show 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, for the rest of 2021. If we don't see any growth with it, we obviously aren't bringing value, and we'll stop the show. You guys can check it out, or if you guys want to message me, it's upandititshow@gmail.com. Let me know what you guys want to hear about. If you got any ideas of things, it's some things you're interested in. The show's called Up and In It, and you can find that on TikTok, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, and anywhere where you find the podcasts. As I always say, guys, go out there and have yourself a near life experience. Don't lose your muchness. Carry on the fire. Human up. Live it, love it, own it, and bone it, my friends.